And you are welcome along to the latest episode of the Huddle Breakdown with James here as host and my good friend Alan Morrison from Celtic by Numbers. Uh, Good morning from me, Alan. We're recording a little early for me here on a early Tuesday morning. I think you're already what 4 pints into your lunch? Is that where we're at?
It's a normal Tuesday. It's difficult
Yeah,
to actually tell what time of day it is. We've settled into, I think, 2 weeks of gloom and drizzle. So autumn is officially here. Well,
yes.
we nearly got flooded out last week, so it's an improvement.
Well, we're here to discuss and decompose and analyze the 4-1 victory at Tynecastle on the weekend against that colossus of managerial talent that was hired in Edinburgh. And then we're going to look ahead to tomorrow's Champions League game against Atletico Madrid. I mentioned to you before we went live, I have a confession to make. My attention was distracted a bit during the game. I was watching the game on my phone. We had a family obligation, and I was actually in the midst of a. You can see I was in a salon run by my three nieces, who were ranging in ages of 7 to 2. So I've gotten the color out of my balding head when they did my hair, but my nails are still done. So for those watching on YouTube, you can see the glorious.
Yeah.
Um,
I think you need
Being
to
a good
commit
uncle,
to
you
it.
have to.
Yeah.
Uh, you
It, look,
have
it,
to.
look,
If
it
you're
looks
gonna
a bit faded. I think you've got to go full color.
Yes,
Really
yes.
commit
Well,
to it. Layer it on. Yeah.
I didn't select the colors either, so I left them for
Yeah.
full
I don't think
artistic.
that's your color. I mean, I think in
Well,
principle it's a great idea. I just don't think that's your color.
I don't think I have a color to be honest with you, Alan, the way I look. But um, well, let's move ahead here. This was one of those games where um, it was an obliteration statistically. I think if we look at kind of the underlying metrics, both from a quality of chances, from a shots, possession, I mean, you name it. It was kind of a soup to nuts domination from the good guys for the good guys or by the good guys. So outside of teeing that up, what was your broad assessment of the game?
And so when I watched the game, because it was on Sunday afternoon, I think we'd had a nice, very pleasant afternoon with some friends. So I didn't actually see it till sort of later that evening, and I was in a reasonably good mood at the time, and enjoyed the game and thought Celtic were brilliant, and that was it. And then, of course, in the cold light of day, started watching it back again. And listen, I don't want to be the one that I think we do get stick sometimes for focusing on negatives. Part of that's to do with just not being cheerleady at all and trying to really sort of highlight where Celtic can improve. And I don't think there's anything particularly that came out in that game. Really, what I'm leading to is I'm staggered actually at how terrible Hearts were. I mean, uh, that was a performance that I would almost have expected Naismith to have resigned after the game. It was that atrocious. I couldn't understand what they were trying to do at
Would you
all
would
in
would you
any aspect of the
characterize it?
game.
Would you characterize it as Beal-esque?
Well, was it as bad as Beale? It doesn't have as good play. I mean, look, you've got a team that clearly has got virtually no pace in it, right? So what do? Well, you try and do what I mean, the team that was always to me the sort of slowest team in the league that we played in terms of players was always St Johnstone, and what Callum Davidson used to do was, of course, he would compensate for that by at least making them really compact. So you reduce the spaces between the players, especially defensively, and you try and move forward as a team as well, and you try and build the play. What you don't do is you don't have a really slow team and then bang long balls into the channels when all season you've been easily the third most possession dominant team in the league, and you tend to rack up 400 passes a game. You're obviously quite a team that is used to having the ball, keeping the ball. So I think you try to do that and exert some level of control. You don't leave enormous gaps between the lines. Um, you know, there was and then you've got three forwards who seem to be under orders to press, but none of them. I think Vargas was okay, but he kept committing fouls. The other two, Shankland and Lowry, were just hopeless at pressing. So it was so easy to play through the front first three, and then you're defending with seven players, and then there's an enormous gap between those three and the defense, and it was just so easy. It was so easy, and essentially, you're giving probably easily, well, I say probably the best midfield in the league. Hatate, O'Reilly, and McGregor. You're just giving them all the space in the world to play and completely dictate the game. So if I was Hearts, you either push up and stay compact, or you drop back and stay compact. But you stay compact. You don't stretch your own team, especially when you don't have the recovery pace. You don't press with forwards that can't press, and you don't bang long balls into the channels for slow forwards to chase after. With the likes of Carter Vickers or Johnson, who just gobbled those things up. So I had no idea what they were trying to do on the ball. I had idea what they were trying to achieve off the ball. I thought it was a terrible performance from them. And then just basic things. I mean, the first two goals, the O'Reilly goal was a wonderful, wonderful piece of skill. There's no doubt about that. But he just ran off the midfielder. He just stopped following him. And similarly, the second goal, I think, the fantastic goal. But again, whoever the Cochrane that was tracking Tati just let him run off him. It's just basics. It's really basic defensive organisation and tracking your runners. Um, Again, the big mistake to give away that penalty. Cochrane completely missed a long high ball. It was just, I mean, so those individual errors were just really on top of what was systemically just an awful performance, an awful way that the team had been set up. And then, you know, we probably don't, I know we don't really put a lot of stock by these things, but after the game, I don't think I've seen a manager look so hopelessly out of his depth and defeated as Naismith looked. And he just sounded so unconvincing. He had nothing to say that I would have thought, if I was a Hearts fan, okay, we can get behind this guy. He understands what needs to be fixed here. I thought they were, and I'm sorry I'm focusing on the opposition, but they were beyond abject. They really were. I've never seen a Hearts team as poor as that I can remember. I know we had a 7-0 one there once, but I can't remember them being as poor as this.
Well, I think this one could have been a 7-0.
Yeah, yeah.
It wouldn't have been surprising given how they set up, and this was always my my bugaboo, which is um, the extent with which there's this almost cultural expectation that the Edinburgh clubs are going to play in a certain way against us at home because that's just the expectation, and then it's turns into this if it's not executed well, or if they don't have the personnel to do it. And yeah, that would when I saw what looked like Lawrence Shankland playing as the number 10, I was like, well, that's interesting. That's very that's Beal-esque.
Mm,
And
mm,
even Lauer, I mean, Lowry's had some decent games this season for them, but not at wing. I mean, again, what's he doing out in left wing? To your
mm.
point about their midfield. So basically, they played us. Again, these things shift. I think it was more of a 4-4-2 defending, but nominally a 4-2-3-1 in attack with Shanklin as a 10 and basically two midfielders. I mean, that's in transitions. They had
Well, this is it. This is the problem. I think when the 4-2-3-1 was more of an attacking shape, and most of these things are. I would expect them, when without the ball, to have fallen back into some kind of compact shape, but they didn't. They stayed in a rigid 4-2-3-1 with big gaps between the lines, and it was just so easy. It was so easy to play through.
well, and that's so a stat I'll throw out as I did look at their average defensive distance, which is a metric, whether it measures tackles, presses, duels, all that stuff, counter presses, and the average distance on the pitch. Um, and their average was, I think, 5% higher than what their season average is so far.
Right.
So, so they were even more aggressive positionally in doing that versus us than they have been against other teams, which again, maybe not a
Mm.
good idea generally. And again, averages are averages. You got to look at the dispersion. But I looked at the kind of the heat map and the event map and stuff too, and it was pretty wild how extended they were at times without much, show for it. I mean, that it
Yeah,
was they were almost cosplaying as a press. They weren't really actually functionally pressing, even though they were
yeah.
kind of getting close enough that they could theoretically count that as a pressure, but it wasn't really causing any bother. Yeah, it was one of those, and it really is. The lack of athleticism and pace was pretty
Yeah.
stark. I mean,
We
our
sorry, just
they
one
just
one
weren't
s
able to
one stat.
close people down.
One
Yep.
one sorry, James. One stat is, yes, we Celtic gave the ball away in their own defensive third once in the first half. So it was just, yeah, it was just ineffective, really.
Yep. Yeah. So well, I agree with you. That's probably the overarching um, driver of the game was how, because in fairness, it didn't look like it was due to us imposing onto them. It was more so that seemed to be their game plan, and then they didn't really adjust much to speak of. um, and it certainly made it easier for us relative to a bunkered opponent that is disciplined and narrow, that kind of thing. But yeah, let's highlight some of the positives on the Celtic side. Obviously, we mentioned you mentioned the brilliance of the first goal from O'Reilly, and the ball was the pass was pretty good too. So just a nice sequence there. A lot of talk about Matt O'Reilly. You've been the president of his fan club since he was signed, I think was fair to say. So so not only
Yeah,
his
well, I like,
performance on weekend, but just
yeah,
generally his season so far.
yeah, I mean, I like intelligent footballers and good decision makers, and he generally is. And he looked so comfortable. And again, it was another one of those kind of all-round performances in terms of, defensive positioning, doing his job well in terms of recoveries, getting his foot in when he needed to, turning the ball over when he needed to, winning his duels, then getting the ball forward, and then also getting into the box as well. He's. I've not got through collecting all the data yet, but he's. I actually, the Kyogo goal, if you watch it carefully, he absolutely plays that ball to Kyogo. He flicks it onto Kyogo. He sees him because you can see his reaction as soon as his little flick goes through the defender's leg and reaches Kyogo. He absolutely went that. So that wasn't officially given as assist, but I'm giving that one. So another goal, another assist. He created other chances as well. So again, it's just the all round nature of his game that is it's not there's not one thing. Again, one feature of him which I've not really written about, but I've talked about a little bit is, when you talk about packing, the most impactful packing is taking defenders out of the game. Obviously, if you can take defenders out of the game through passes or running, and nobody takes defenders out of the game more than Matt O'Reilly does. It's a feature. It's almost like I mean, it's such a noticeable thing. It's almost like he knows. If I play this pass, it really is the risk reward, because if I take a defender out of the game, then you really are in business. You've completely disrupted the back line at that point. And he'd taken eight defenders out of the game early into the second half. Now, eight, to put that into context, O'Reilly, as I say, leads the squad in this ever since I've captured it, and it's normally around about 2 to 3 a game. So eight is a fantastic number for a single game. So yeah, listen, just again, an overall great performance. And then, beside him, you had Tati, who again was a mixture of the brilliant and the awful. Brilliant flick to set up the third goal, some lovely passes in the first half, and then again giving at least three pack turnovers. A couple of times he literally just passed the ball straight back, and suddenly it's like 2 on 2 at the back. Now, again, Hearts didn't have the pace to exploit that, but if that's Griezmann or Morata, then you're in huge trouble at that moment. In fact, again, partway through the second half, he's up to 6 pack turnovers, which is just a ridiculously high number. A pack turnover is worse than it's not just giving the ball away; it's giving the ball away in such a way that you've basically put your teammates out of the game. They're now behind the ball and can't impact the defensive shape. So it's a serious offence, I would say. But again, some beautiful touches in there. the setup for the second goal as well was fantastic from Maeda, that run. So again, it's funny. It's funny how even though when Hearts let Celtic play, it didn't actually change the way that the Celtic play. To your point, people still pretty much performed as they do. Maeda was busy but wasteful, as he has been. Palmer was a mixture again of turning the ball away, easily giving it up, but then the odd nice moment, nice insightful pass, nice change of direction. So nobody performed differently to how they normally perform, but they were just allowed to breathe, I suppose. And Palmer, Hitati, Maeda, if they gave the ball away, lost the ball, they knew they were going to get it back very shortly in a decent position to try and create something, and that's how it. And McGregor was allowed to just pretty much tick things along quite easily. The defence was put under virtually no pressure. I think Hearts had something like 13 shots, but their XG was well below one, so they were just really poor quality efforts that they had throughout the game. There was no real. I mean, I think Hart made something like 5 saves, but I don't remember any of them. You see what I mean? Because it's like they were just almost like fielding the ball, almost like pass
Yeah,
back
from
sort of
distance mostly. Yeah.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I looked at O'Reilly so far this season, compared him to last season, and I think there's, thinking about, 'cause I think, there were people that got down on him a lot of not a lot, a little last season because of the lack of goal scoring, at times, and maybe some decent chances that he wasn't taking, and that pendulum has actually swung in a true mean reverting way. So his xG per game, he's basically doubling it right now with his post shot xG and goal scoring. So um, you know it- he wasn't as bad as he looked last season, and he's probably not quite as good as he looks right now in this kind of short sample in the season so far. But his overall, from he's definitely getting higher quality, higher volume number of chances, and the finishing's been great. And keepers haven't been, they've been tough. Like it's I think his average post shot xG per shot's like over zero point 0.6, which is unsustainably high, like great and incredibly high. So those are tough shots for keepers to be saving, and they haven't been, generally speaking. So that's the positive, but the nuance. I mean, let's not get over our skis that he's going to score 40 goals. I mean, people aren't going to expect that, but you know what I mean. There's it wouldn't be crazy if he ends up having a stretch here where maybe some of these brilliant finishes aren't quite as brilliant. And then the other part, which I was actually surprised when I looked at it, the degree with which kind of the average chance quality on his creativity has dropped. But that, I think, again, that's more so from the systemic issues. We see that across the board, um, and we've talked about this repeatedly. Uh,
He's more of his chances are set piece chances though, because he's taking like
yeah,
virtually all the corners now. So that's, I think, a big driver for that dropping.
for that but if he looks just at open play, it's down materially as well.
Okay.
Again, in
Yeah.
in the stats bomb data at least. So he's kind of sub point one, I think, even, which again would be for him. Um, and even if you just benchmark against prior seasons of creative Celtic midfielders, that would be on the low side. But yeah, I'm not, to your point, good example of you know using our eyes, but more so just judgment, which is I don't think that's due to his decision making as much as systemic issues, because again, to your point on his still taking out defenders and still breaking lines, and and if you look at things like his turnover ratio and being dispossessed, those numbers haven't moved much. So it's more so, I think, functioning of what's going on with the system and the other players around him, and the difference between that the season and last that we've talked about quite a bit already. So um, at this point, I'm chalking that up to as being the material factor there.
We're still, I mean, we're still in the sort of small sample size. So, for example,
Right.
what I just talked about there, whereby I'm convinced that he played the ball through to Kyogo for that goal, and
Right.
probably StatsBomb won't credit him with an assist for that, and that's actually a
Correct.
really high value chance that he
Yep.
should have got, which that's going to deflate his numbers across all of the providers, I suspect. Whereas mine will
100.
you'll look there'll be a disparity there, and at this stage, because it's a again small sample, that one chance actually will have quite a big impact because it was such a high value chance.
100% agreed. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, and that's the other thing that jumped out at me when I kind of debriefed on the game from the match report. Um, it was the degree with which you've got, the center backs just completely um, manhandle the game, meaning that it was like a walk in the park. So they were able to rack up a lot of output and a lot of things, particularly going forward. And I think that was to the point of them not really being coherently pressured much. So it was, like it was another one of those games where Liam Scales looks like uh, Beckenbauer. But some of that's because of maybe
Um,
who the opposition was and how they set up the play. But
we'll see if he can chase Morata around all night.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, the one you know major downside obviously was the goal that they scored, which made it a little nervy, I guess. At that point I was actually in the car. Um, Listening to the TV broadcast on my phone while driving. Um, and when I looked at the highlights later, I mean, it was more like just a wasn't really much in it. But,
No, that was made a terrible, terrible,
r
terrible error, and then the actual
right.
shot's a great shot because he sets it off outside the post and it just clips the post and goes in. So even though it's a long way out, I don't think any blame for Hart on that one.
No.
I think it's just a great finish.
No. Yeah, and that's I don't think even the scoreline reflected, the competitive balance within the game because of that, because it was, kind of I wouldn't call it a fluky goal because it was such a great finish from, Shanklin. But, um, yeah, pretty dreadful giveaway and then just a brilliant finish. So wasn't much in it as far as chance creation. So they were barely in our box the entire day. So, any other thoughts here? We're going to try and keep this one a little shorter today, as we'll do a review on Thursday. So, any other than just slagging off Naismith and their and
No, I just
highlighting
don't
some of
know.
the brilliant moments from our
Yeah.
side. But
Yeah, yeah, I don't know where they go from here. I mean, like you say, it was odd that they had I think Boyce is obviously getting older now, and he's had a bad injury, so he's even slower than the ones that they had on the pitch. But they've been using him as that sort of number 10 that Shanklin was trying to play. But the two of them together, they're both clever players, and although they don't have a lot of pace, they link well, and their movement's good, and they're good technical players. So I don't understand if you're going to ask Shankland to do that job, why don't you just stick Boyce on and be done with it? Because again, I know Lowry had some nice touches, but he's like a man down defensively. So, Boyce will at least battle. But Mackay's probably the one that can cover the ground for them a little bit, and he was obviously injured. I don't know who else they've got that might have a bit of pace. Or Oda, I think he came on, but he's a little bit quicker. But yeah, I don't know where they go. But listen, it's another. We don't know what the impact has been in terms of these kind of expected points type tables on Celtics. The fact that the fixture list, the way it's been for Celtic so far this season, we've played all the sort of harder teams away, really. But Hearts, I think, are like down to be seventh or eighth at this moment, which is absolutely shocking, really. As I say, if you're looking at the data and looking at that, you'd be sacked. I think if you were a Brighton or a Brentford or something like that, you'd be out by now. Get somebody in while you've still got a chance of winning the semi-final, League Cup semi-final. But for Celtic, I think it's a good morale booster that injuries are clearing up. So it's all positive in that sense. I'd still like to see more cohesion. I'd like to see more consistency from the likes of Maeda, Palmer, Hitati, especially in terms of their attacking play. There's flashes and there's good bits, but there's quite a bit of junk as well. I'd just like to see more try and reach the level that Kyogo and O'Reilly are playing at. Because I think those two are playing at such a high level. It's kind of carrying the attack still a little bit. Having said all that, that's 2 games, 7 different goal scorers. That's a nice fact.
Yeah, when I actually put a tweet out when the fixture list came out, and because at that point we were still in kind of the I don't know, not the ugly honeymoon period of Rogers' return, so that I think there were still kind of latent knives ready to come out for him. Um, and with my assessment of the transfer window not being really great at that point, uh, trying to manage expectations a little bit in my own little way about the first 11 games. The fixtures were tougher for us, almost all the tougher games away, Rangers being the opposite, and said basically wouldn't be shocking if the league table was close or even Rangers were ahead after the first round. Obviously, we've gone the exact opposite direction. Um, and I don't think that's because we've been blowing the doors off performance-wise. We've been getting the results, obviously, but we got a healthy dose of assist from Mickey. But I I I think it's interesting how much the in the fixture list will stress test us now because um, because of that cultural issue of teams home actually having a go, so to speak, and they're not, for the most part, trying that when they come to Celtic Park. I wonder how we'll handle, because as I've seen this team more and more, I get more and more. If I think about kind of relative strengths and weaknesses, breaking down the low block is increasingly my concern.
Mm,
And so whereas in July I was maybe on the margins more concerned about being on these away fixtures. I think that was probably the wrong take. Uh,
mm,
and I may actually get more concerned about the should have been, and I think about kind of the competitive issues. Having St. Mirren and Motherwell and some of these more organized, better managed teams not try and have a go, basically play in December for a 0-0 at Celtic Park and setting up that way. That makes me more nervy than going to Tynecastle versus a Naismith managed team that's completely incoherent. So
mm.
we'll see as the calendar flips here and we finish out the first 11. Well, let's look ahead to tomorrow then. We've got an easy game. We're home in the Champions League, so this should be a slam dunk. We've got Atletico Madrid coming in. Um, I did look that I think the one major injury they have is Depay is still out or is out, um, and so at least listed as out until I think early November, mid-November. So again, I don't know how accurate those reports are, but I suspect he won't be playing. Um, but I'll give you a quick summary because I did do some benchmarking, looked at them. Um, right so far this season, I think they're fourth in the table in La Liga. uh, their underlying metrics would have them lower than that. Actually, their chance creation hasn't been all that impressive as as they are apt to be. They are very well organized in limiting chances. They have the lowest xG conceded in the league. And basically, their goal scoring has been excellent. They've kind of been overperforming their xG, which again, given who they have at the striker position, would not be surprising, particularly in small samples. They've been playing almost universally 3-5-2, 5-3-2, depending on home and away. Um, they're not all that again under their manager. They're not all that bothered about possession. Some games they'll have a lot of possession, even on the away, depending on the opposition. But they'll go to Osasuna and have 35-40% possession and win comfortably. So it'll be interesting, I think, how Rodgers sets up and decides to tactically approach the game, because I suspect they'll be fine with us taking possession and kind of controlling, quote unquote, possession for long stretches if we decide to do that. and then look to hit us on the break, which probably wouldn't be the craziest idea from them. So that's why when this group was put out, this was probably the fixture I was most worried about. Is Real
Yes.
is Atletico Madrid at home, actually, not even in Madrid. So it'll be interesting. Any thoughts on what those comments and just generally this matchup going into tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. I mean, this is a horrible team to have to play, to be honest. They don't lose many goals. They don't lose many games against anybody. I know you say that they're overperforming in XG. That's absolutely right. But by goals scored per game and goals conceded per game, they're first and second in La Liga at the moment. 2.6 goals for, 0.9 against. If they win their game in hand in La Liga, they'll go top. They'll be top of that league. They've won six in a row. The last six matches, they've scored 16 goals, including beating Real Madrid 3-1. And all this, after they'd spent 14 million on not really anyone in particular in the summer. They'd sold about 100 million euros worth of talent. So they've not suddenly brought in loads of players. This is a very experienced, gnarly team, who know how to, who grind out a result and get a result. To your point, yeah, they're about 50-50 on possession on average, but like you say, they'll dominate
Can't be bothered.
if they can, and they're not bothered if they don't. Yeah, they play the sixth most number of long balls in La Liga, which I think is interesting. I think they'll look to try and get the pace of Morata and Griezmann, and also the two wing backs are pretty
I was gonna
rapid as
say the
well.
wing backs. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, the wing backs are almost completely provide them with their width. This isn't going. This is going to be the completely opposite of Tynecastle. McGregor, O'Reilly and Hatate are going to be in a forest of players. They absolutely jam the middle of that pitch. They control the middle of the pitch. Celtic's best hope really is they don't really control the flank areas, and their fullbacks do like to bomb on. So you'd think that this is Maeda, Kyogo pulling wide, Palmer. That's really the best chance Celtic have. I think is almost catching them on Celtic playing on the break and catching them with diagonals or balls into the full behind the fullback wingback positions. Because then again, see, they don't care if they feel that they need to drop deep, they'll drop deep. They don't feel the need to push up. So that if they'll play a sweeper out of the back three if they need to as well. Because again, these are very experienced defenders, and they find a way. So this is I think this is an incredibly difficult task. We're not going to see lots of long balls. Sorry, lots of crosses into the box. I think they're nearly last in La Liga for banging crosses into the box. So it's all going to be about creating quick movement, quick, clever passes in and around the box, especially from the wing backs, the two centre forwards. I mean, Morata and Griezmann both have absolutely terrific movement. Their movement is wonderful. Um, and so even though Morata's not necessarily going to sprint away from anyone, he can get away from anybody over 2 or 3 yards in the box very 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 easily. And Griezmann's just a very very clever, intelligent player. So two very intelligent forwards, a lot of pace in the wide areas, good technical ability in central midfield, allied to a lot of grit and a lot of dig and a lot of strength and tackling. That a real chance that we'll get overpowered a little bit in the middle of the pitch there. So yeah, this is going to be a really tough one. I think, in all honesty, I don't see many weaknesses in this team. I mean, you could make a case for them. The genuine La Liga contenders this year, even though they haven't, as I say, particularly strengthened the squad. But we all know under Simeone, it's the power of the system, and bringing in players like Azpilicueta, hugely experienced, knowledgeable player that playing against a team of Celtic's standard. He might get exposed against Man City and the likes, but he's probably not going to get exposed that much against Celtic. But we can hope, I suppose.
Yeah, well, and I wanted to clarify my comments about them overperforming. One of the reasons that they're overperforming, I think, is that if you break down their XG per shot, we've talked about that as a red flag for Celtic this season potentially. Um, Meaning that the average chance quality that we're creating versus what we're conceding, we usually have a wide gap. It's usually like 0.12 versus 0.08 or 0.07, that kind of thing. And we're more closer to parity this season so far. And again, expect that'll change, but um, they're basically right. I think they're second from the top in their league. And I think the top one is on low volume. If it's one of the smaller clubs that maybe probably low sample size, probably just had a couple of really good chances on the counter or something. And then their average shot they concede is like to your point. I mean, the Simeone system in just limiting chances, they well under point
Which
one as far as chance.
they
Yeah, it's
pack, they'll give Celtic space out wide, but they'll pack the middle, and it'll be very difficult to break down. Yeah, I mean, they have no. To your point, you're absolutely spot on. I think they've scored 23 goals off of like 17 xG or something, and the conversion rate is crazy. They're converting 16% of all shots. Now,
yeah.
anything 10, the next highest in the league is like 12%. So they're going no. But I think based on only one season of evidence with Celtic last season, I think there's something where this isn't a linear thing. I think there's a thing where if you continually create good chances, which Postecoglou's team did, and by that I mean getting the ball to people low to their feet in the middle of the goal. If you keep doing that, then suddenly your conversion rate doesn't go up. It's more exponential than it is linear, and therefore your shot conversion goes up, and you start overperforming on your xG, and your xG per shot goes up, and all that. And I don't think that's a pure linear relationship. I'm not a mathematician, and I couldn't model it. But that's just my gut feeling, and I think we're seeing a little bit of that with Atletico Madrid this season, where you think they're overperforming, and is it how much of it is down to luck? But then you see that they've got a coherent way of playing, and you see that the quality of the strikers is very very high. You sort of think, well, it might not be luck; it might just be they consistently create very good chances. And to your point, with three central defenders that won't get dragged out off the width of the penalty area, and three midfielders who can all defend parked in front of them, they're going to be very difficult to break down.
Yeah, that's so. This is where I'll go back to where I began this segment of the conversation of the show is, uh, if I think matchup wise, this is a bit of a nightmare, um, and from a Rogers tactics perspective, I suspect, and even just some of his comments that he's made heading into this, even before I guess the presser will be today. I don't know if it was yesterday or it'll be today, but um, the understandable respect, paying homage to their attacking talent, particularly the striker position. Um, I wonder if he does kind of set up to be defensive and on margin. Again, he's not going to be an extremist, but um, play more like we did at Feyenoord, and even though we're at home, because of this matchup specifically. And because one of the areas where, because I agree with you, their back line isn't the paciest. So if you're going to try and get something off of them, and again, it's not like they're not facing this level of talent, but on the margin, Maeda and Kyogo getting in behind on the counter, if we were able to pull them out a little bit, um, and get in behind. To me, that would be the most likely um, possibility for us to get some really high quality chances. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I suspect that's probably in Simeone's head too. So maybe they'll just stand on their sides and kick the ball back and forth with neither one wanting the ball.
Well, to be honest with you, that this is my biggest hope. I think is that traditionally, and again, listen, they've been to one game at Vallecano and scored seven. Right? They've scored three in I think most of the last six games that they've won. They've scored at least three. So they might come at us, and that would be horrendously worrying if they did. But if they set up to be a sort of classic Simeone away performance of being a bit circumspect, and Rodgers is a bit circumspect, if it's still 0-0 in the 60th minute, I'm going to be pretty happy with that. To be honest with you, because
Yep.
then you just never know. Then you're down to, well, football things can happen, right? We get a free kick or whatever. Um, then my fear is that out of character, they go for it and they absolutely go at Celtics. I think that could be really difficult.
Yeah, I agree. That's my hope is that it's kind of a just stodgy 0-0 for a long stretch, and maybe we get some mean reverting luck in our favor, and
Yeah,
some of their attacking output has a bad day, and uh, that high
all the
conversion
shots
rate.
go straight at Joe Hart.
Right.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
Griezmann just all of a sudden starts ballooning balls over the
yeah.
crossbar, but, um, so, yeah, I think, the consensus is, concern and hopefully we keep it close, and, I think, it's a single game, anything can happen, so obviously we can, um, get a result with a good performance and if they have a slightly off day, but, yeah, I'd say if both teams are fully at it, it's one I'm nervous about. Um, so any final thoughts? We'll wrap it up here right around the 40-minute mark for uncharacteristically.
No, 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 no. As I say, again, conscious of maybe that being a little bit negative, but again, think back last season. If we were as coherently consistent in our attacking plays were last season, then that's what we were saying every week. And say, well, oh, we won 4-0, should have been 6. And next week, I expect we'll win 4-0 again. That's what the performance data was telling us this season. I think we're inching forward. And the most fascinating thing, again, for me is really, and it alluded to what you said there, James. It's how Rodgers set Celtic up against this team. I think that's, to me, the most fascinating. I think you'll have a plan. I think it will probably be a good plan, and I just hope we get that little bit of luck that if we stick to plan and we're performing credibly to it, that we get that little bit of rub of the green that I think we need, and it's what Celtic need. What most pot four teams need to get anything out of these games. You do need to get that little rub where you don't get some obscure VAR penalty happen out of nothing when the ball ricochets off somebody's arm, or Keo does take one of the two chances he's going to get during the game, type of thing. So, yeah, listen, we're always hopeful, and I think what Rogers does will be very interesting.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for joining us. Those listening on podcasts, you can rate and review on your favorite distribution platform, iTunes or Spotify. And for those watching on YouTube, we appreciate you looking at our two ugly mugs for 42 minutes. And feel free to subscribe if you haven't already and get involved in the comments below. I think we're going to be back as a threesome an erotic threesome on Thursday to review the game.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, boy. Oh, my nails. I got my nails now, Alan. I mean, let's go. Let's rock. Let's party. Um, and
Have nails will be erotic.
that's right. So we'll be back some point on Thursday to review tomorrow's game, and hopefully it's a celebratory one. So hopefully everyone gets a chance to review or enjoy the game tomorrow. And we will talk to you on Thursday.